Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast, Chassis Sata. Since we've been gone a while, we've got a lot to catch up on. So, what should we be talking about today, George?
Well, today we're going for our Super European special. We are covering the France, the Styrian, and the Austrian Grand Prix. So we're doing them all together in one massively packed podcast.
Should we dig in with our first race?
Yes, of course.
Which was France.
Yes. So, well, the French, it seems ages ago now, the French Grand Prix after this triple header, wasn't it? It's just.
Wow, yeah, in a while.
So, well, the big thing that if we pull out going back to French Grand Prix is probably that in the undercuts that were being played off by every single team here. It was Max had a masterful undercut on the Mercedes, and McLaren completely undercut both the Alpines and just left Alonso with absolutely nothing.
I mean, it was lovely to watch. You were literally going, "Oh, is this going to work? Is this going to work?" And thankfully, I think Perez let Max through so he could have a flying lap able to help lead him back in the race and go into clean air. So, yeah, and Perez doing the long game. He seems to do the long game quite often, but it worked out because he caught up to Bottas, and Bottas was not happy. He called a two-stop strategy from the beginning, saying it's a two-stopper race. Mercedes were like, no, and he got caught in the last couple of laps. And he said he was a sitting duck to Red Bull, and he wanted new tyres, and I didn't think track position was that important when Mercedes thought it was. And what happened? I feel like that was the first race in a while that Mercedes were just losing it. I think that's where they're losing constructors.
Well, I think this is a mistake that. So at the beginning of the season, it looked like we were going to have another traditional season, and suddenly these last 6 races we've had now, we've had a Red Bull win, and it's just been a complete and utter mess for Mercedes. All right, so we'll stick for France at the moment, but you could tell Bottas was really as you said, his team radio at the end was pretty clear how angry he was with the team for not listening to him. And it's not the first time now that they're making these mistakes to leaving Bottas out for dry, like the mechanics make with the mess up of his pit stops. And it just seems that he's had enough of this complacency that the team has actually got. And I don't blame him at all. Especially with someone in his position where there is lots of talks of him losing his seat next year. He needs to put his elbows out and make it very clear that it's not good enough from the team that are not delivering. It isn't actually him.
No, it's not him. He called it from the very start. It's a two-stop race, and they did not listen to him. And I would be furious, Okay, he knows he's number 2. Hamilton's better, well, in the team eyes. But you still listen to your drivers.
Yeah.
They're the one driving the race. They sort of know the condition best. And, why not take a risk? It would have paid off.
No, I don't know. I agree but this was the whole problem. We only a couple of episodes ago we were commenting how good Mercedes' strategy is, and now it's awful. Like these calls we're going back to the date that what happened back in Baku last year with George, and how they ruined his race for him. And it's just continuing, and you can see so if we go back to the opening lap, like when Max made that mistake and he ended up at turn 2 going off and lost track position, it kind of just let Hamilton have free run. But the fact that Max was still caught him and then pulled an undercut on him just shows how out of it Mercedes actually are. They just can't. The car is, it's becoming clear, not particularly great this year. It's just not performing. It should be the same car as last year, and last year's car was an absolute joke because it was just so far ahead of the rest of the field. And suddenly, I don't know what's happened, but Red Bull have really somehow found or comfortable with the fact how much money they've invested in next year's car that they want to spend a bit more on this year.
Yeah, well, we saw it from testing. Mercedes being slow, and we were like, "Oh, that's not gonna. They're gonna fix it. They'll be fine." Yeah, and now look where they are.
Right.
I just.
But this is the shock that we're starting to see. Well, Max is now pulling away, and he's although so before that we had Baku was luckily both teams didn't get Hamilton or Hamilton or Max didn't finish at any point, so that race was null and void really for the drivers' championship. But all right, France showed that Max's masterclass plus with Red Bull strategy was far superior to anything Mercedes had to offer. They knew that Bottas had an awful race because he was just completely left alone and had no position. He had no track influence at all except for where he was in position. Perez was able to pull that, as you mentioned, that unbelievable stint, which, if you remember, both Brundle, Calling said Perez is useless this race. He's not going to do anything. He's got no influence. He's got nothing. So, and suddenly...
Can I also point out... I also point out, Max and Lewis are fighting for, first in the championship. Sergio Perez for Red Bull is currently third.
Yeah.
Norris is fourth. Bottas is fifth.
Yeah.
You would think he would be a lot higher up. And that's because of Mercedes. They need points. Points makes prizes. They're losing it.
No, I agree. And that was the broader point, that Red Bull have two very good cars and two very competent drivers. Mercedes have two very good drivers, but their car is temperamental. Or not temperamental yet. It does work and it produces results, but it's not as good as last year's, and it's not competing as well against the Red Bulls. And their team strategy is so far off the wall that it's costing their drivers points in both championships.
Yeah, no, I'd say it's mainly their strategy that is letting them down. They could have easily won France's race if they didn't think just because Hamilton was leading, she's going to win it. No, it's not over till the fat lady sings. It's a quote. And they just didn't plan ahead, thinking, what happens if this happens and then that happens, and it did happen, and the undercut happened.
Yeah,
and they were like, can't do anything now. Yeah,
they were just so clearly taken by surprise that they had no reaction to it, and they just let it happen. And it's made complacency like this is making their position worse, because everyone's eyes are on them thinking, they're going to have another championship, and actually no, it's just showing them up to be a bit. They've sat on the spot on the throne for too long, and now they've just, that will do. And that attitude is not correct if you want to win a Formula One championship.
On that note, shall we move on to the Styrian
Grand Prix, not the Syrian Grand Prix. That would be a very different type of Grand Prix as you drive around getting pot shots.
So, what do you think of the race?
Boring. In terms of race material to watch and analyse.
Yeah, I did not enjoy it at all. Well, I enjoyed it because I'm a Red Bull fan, but it was boring to watch. It was just dominated from start to finish. Mercedes had no chance. They didn't even try. I don't think they tried.
Yeah, no, I agree. This was just, all right. Mercedes did get to it. They did get Bottas and Hamilton on the podiums. It's a long while since they've had a joint podium, it seems, but it wasn't the fact. Max had a 35 point second lead at the end, like that. And bear in mind, these laps are only one. These are what 1 minute laps, aren't they? 1 minute 3, if you're going 1 minute 4, roughly, is what these are. And suddenly, right, okay, 1 minute 3, 4 qualifying, 1 minute 7, 8 in the race, but nonetheless, this race was no one was doing anything. Max put his foot down and went, and that was about it. It just and it left the rest of the field, like the two Mercedes were just with themselves, and then Perez was leading the pack behind that, and Norris just had quite a lonely race himself in fifth, and that it was left to their own devices, really. And the most exciting bit to actually happen in this race was lap 1, when Leclerc smashed into Gasly, and then Giovinazzi and Latifi and all that got caught up in the crossfire. So poor old Gasly had that retirement, bearing in mind that it was looking very good for AlphaTauri that weekend, and suddenly Gasly loses his front left due to Leclerc just deciding to smash into him. And so I just that was about as best as in the normal of let's see some cars smash up and some racing, and lap 1, and that was about it.
I agree with him. Boring race. Nothing really happened apart from the retirements, but then it was over and done with quite quickly.
Yeah.
And what I enjoyed both the Austrian Grand Prix was that Max has already got out of the car, celebrated, gone to see his team before the other two turn up.
Yeah.
I just can't.
Yeah.
On that note, shall we go to the Austrian, because there's nothing more to say on that one.
We can go. Yeah, we'll go to Austrian because a lot of the points that we're going to bring up are going to relate to both of these Grand Prix in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw, George, but I posted a meme that I got from Twitter. I reshared a meme on Twitter, and it was there was quite a lot of memes about penalties that were given at the track.
Yeah.
I posted one from Wolf and Wall Street, but I also found quite a few like Oprah, like you get a penalty, you get a penalty, you get a penalty. Lots of penalties. Would you want to go through the penalties that were handed out at the Austrian Grand Prix?
Yeah, of course. Right. You may want to get a notepad and a bit of pen for this, because we'll start with we have Vettel getting 1 point for impeding Alonso in qualifying. You have Giovinazzi, who overtook on a safety car. Norris for pushing Perez into the gravel. Perez for doing the same thing to Leclerc. And he got another 2 points on his license for the same thing. Tsunoda crossed the white line on pit entry, and he did that twice, so he got 1 point for that. Raikkonen smashed into Vettel on the final lap, and they got 2 points on his license for that. And Latifi and Mazepin both ignored the double waved yellows after the incident on the final lap, and they got 3 points respectively each. Like this was just unbelievable. I don't know what the stewards like. Some of these, I'll break this down myself. Perez and Norris, I think that is just they were racing incidents. Like you're overtaken on the outside, you're going to get pushed off and you're not on the racing line. Accept that. All right, Tsunoda's that you can't cross the white line type thing at pit entry. Raikkonen was dangerous with Vettel. No one knows what happened there. Both of them were just a bit blasé to it. And Latifi and Mazepin, yeah, they should get their point. It should be a punishment for ignoring double wave yellows, but in the grand scheme of things, this was the final lap of the race and the incident had gone off, so technicalities maybe. But it brings in this wider conversation of how this penalty point system may not be particularly, how do I put this, correct in its application for drivers. Like this system only come in 2014, and since then no driver has been had a race ban, but now we've got 2 drivers both on 10 points. Perez, who by August after the next Grand Prix he'll go back down to 8, so he's a bit safer. But Norris is going to be, he's got a good chunk of races left before he gets any of his points wiped off his license. Pardon?
I think Norris's majority of his get wiped out in October.
I think.
I'll be wrong. But anyway, and the whole thing they kept saying is, we want to race. And then when they have a racing incident, you get a penalty.
Yeah. Like the 2 coming off, there were racing incidents.
I would get it if they were completely wiped out and their race was finished. I get that. But their races weren't finished. They just came off a little bit and then came back on the track.
Yeah.
They were racing into the corners. Let them race.
Yeah. Like this is my concern. So we've got 2 drivers that are fighting for third in the championship. Really, like Norris is pushing for 3rd, 4th, and with Bottas and everything else. So there is this huge competition going on here, and clearly, there were just these things happen, especially on early laps. That will happen, and fine. I understand near the end, like when Perez said he's got no other options, but I understand what McLaren are raising and why Max turned around and said to him, even in the press conference. Norris said, I'm quite worried about this, and I don't think I should have got penalty points for it, because that was what it was. McLaren then said, we want to have a discussion about the entire penalty point system, because it's at no point does Norris have a bad reputation of being a awful driver like Mazepin. Or he's not dangerous either. So why is this going on? And Max sat there and went, well, I don't think you should have got points for that. He said that in the press conference and backed him up. But Michael Massey's response was, teams have had a chance to talk about it at the beginning of the season. No one was open to discussion, so that's what it will be. And they've got no interest in having that discussion this season, at least.
This year has opened up a lot of problems.
Yeah. Well, this is my concern. So with this year, we've had track limits being thrown left, right, and centre. We've now got problems with penalties and the penalty point system, because in reality, stewards are getting a bit gun-ho. I don't think. Well, okay. Well, so not only do you get 5 seconds on your race, you shouldn't get 2 penalty points as well. You should get 2 penalty points if you destroy someone's car and it's quite dangerous, or 3. You should get penalty points if you're actually having a dangerous. You're doing something dangerous on track, but otherwise, just give them 2 seconds. You don't need penalty points for every single penalty you get. And
I agree.
Yeah, and the final one, which is really worrying, is technical directives that are just being midway through seasons. I'm not a big fan of that, if I'm honest. I don't the technical directive about pit stops. It's now illegal in 2 or 3 races time to have a pit stop less than 2 seconds.
I don't get that.
Yes, because it's not safe. So what they'll do is they'll put sensors on the car. So if you complete an action or certain action under 0.2 of a second, which happens often in Red Bull pit stops to get the 1.8 seconds, but they have to wait for the sensor, and if the sensor fails, they've got to repeat the action again. So it means you cannot get a sub 2 second. So teams like Williams, Red Bull, who have got absolutely exemplary pit crews to get these and pull off these sub 2 second pit stops.
Also
Aston Martin can't do that anymore. So they're a big part of their strategy, and this is because of a technical directive change that allows them to do that. So the FIA will now ban them, and teams will be punished for it. So they can't release the cars unless they get a green light on the sensor. But this sensor, if you do actions too quickly, will foul and won't trigger, and you have to do the action again.
But the whole point of a pit stop It's to try and help you in strategy and help you to try and gain places, lose places, and that's the whole part of the race.
Yeah.
I don't. This is what I don't. And it's also a human, right? It's based on humans. How do you know if you've done your action in 2 seconds? You can't change that.
No,
And the whole point I like is seeing how quick that pit stop is. Oh, that one was really slow. This one was really fast.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
No, I agree, and this is
And it was Mercedes though.
Well, the Mercedes will be all right with it because it actually benefits them because they very rarely get a sub 2 second pit stop. So I wouldn't worry about. They're actually quite happy with where this is, but this is the problem.
Of course they are.
But this is the concern that, in reality, for the teams that do get harmed by this, but it's because the FIA can just change it on a whim. I understand if we got to the end of the season and this was placed in at the end of the season, going into next season, and say, look, we're changing the rules on this. You've got to do pit stops this particular way. Okay, very irritating. But doing it mid-season.
No, mid-season is like it just it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Why change something right away from the beginning? Like, as they've been throughout the whole of the season, they haven't been like open and like transparency, like the whole penalties and the whole track limits. Like, it's changed every single day, weekend. Like, what is actually correct, what is not.
Yeah.
This is what annoys me. I like consistency, and it's just not happening.
No, and that's the same worry that I have, because it's just we are just seeing this run around in circles over and over again, and the FIA. But this is the problem, because it is its own regulating body for the sport. It can do what it likes, and and that's the problem. No one is challenging this. I know that teams will kick back slightly, but they can't. You have to accept it, or you don't race. And okay, and if we step back and I play devil's advocate, and they're saying about safety. I'm sorry, but they're concerned about tyres coming off on things, but that hardly ever happens. It's and the times that you have are isolated incidents.
Yeah, I don't get, like, it just annoys me. It really annoys me. Let's move on, because I could really have a massive rant about it, and I'm getting upset about it.
Okay.
And also, can I just mention, so for the people that they're coming in, for the viewers from the Netflix, documentary about it all, you've got more people coming in, and you've been like, this is the rules from day one, this da-da-da. Now they're coming in and goes, what's this? What's happening here? Why is that happening?
Yeah.
People are getting confused, and it will put people off.
Yeah. So if you're not following it, it's hard to keep up with, and that's the problem. So I think there's only two more really big points we can get across here, aren't we? Because like the Austrian Grand Prix, apart from the penalties, not much really else happened, did it?
No, apart from the George versus Alonso fight for 10 laps, which Alonso was like, he was like, I'm so sorry. It was the worst thing I wanted to see was the Williams, and I felt so bad, but I just had to.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, because for him, these points actually matter. And for Williams, it's just a courtesy point. And that's the problem. And I understand why Alonso has got. I think he's mellowed in his age. I know people never liked Alonso's attitude, and I think he's got older, and he is far much more laid back and open to having these conversations. And I know, because he got out of the car and he went straight to George and said, I'm so sorry, and he said, don't worry, you'll get loads more points. Like, you don't need to worry about that. It would have just been nice after last weekend. He retires after having an amazing Q3, pulls off another set of Q3 appearance and starts 9th in the Austrian Grand Prix, and then in the last 10 laps loses his 10th place and loses his 1 point.
It's sad, but he is an Williams, so
I know, and it is so impressive that he's managed to find some pace in that Williams.
not helping Bottas. Oh, that was one thing I wanted to mention was Bottas followed the rules. During the race, Hamilton was slow on. He was like, you can stay in 1 point system, you can't overtake him.
Yeah.
Bottas was like, fine, I'm going to stay in 1 second of him. And then when he was allowed to race, he took that and followed, direction. But it was also, he followed, what Mercedes wanted, but said, listen, you've got to listen to me. I'm quicker, let me go. And they swapped the cars round, which wouldn't have happened a couple of weeks ago.
No.
But it also is probably good if he wants to stay at Mercedes. It probably benefits him that he's like, I've followed everything you wanted. You said not to race. I followed it.
Yeah.
And I got on the podium where Hamilton didn't.
Yeah. No,
and the other one to mention, the last point, was how slow Mercedes were. And that's mainly because of Hamilton.
Yeah, that
He
mistake.
made a mistake, went off the track, got a laceration. I don't know what it was, but it became really slow.
Yeah, no, that was that entire. Yeah, no, I agree. This entire weekend for Mercedes has just been awful, and as you said, letting that moment that they say Bottas is quicker than you, let him through and you need to race, and that was quite, I think, a good moment for Mercedes to realise, as you say, he's followed the rules and everything else, and I think the weekends like this help him a lot more than the weekends before. He needs more weekends like the Austrian Grand Prix, not the Styrian Grand Prix. I think he needs to prove himself.
Yes, but also it was also too late. He did a couple of laps behind Hamilton, who was slow.
Yeah,
it was too late for him to then try and catch up to Verstappen. But I think they sort of knew that. But they needed the points. And Hamilton wasn't going to get anywhere with the points.
No.
On that note, should we go to our predictions? Because there's not much else to say.
No, of course. We'll let's start with France.
So our predictions for the France Grand Prix was Hamilton was on pole for me, and George put Verstappen. George got the pole.
Yeah,
pole point,
did.
Bonus point. So together we did really well. we got half and half.
Yep.
So George put Verstappen, Hamilton, which he got right, and then I got the last three right. So I got Perez, Bottas, and Norris, and that was the top 5 order. So in that hole, George got 3, I got 3 points, which meant that my total came up to 10, and George's was 17. Do you want to talk through the Styrian?
Yeah, Styrian. Yeah, so at Styrian Grand Prix, we swapped round our pole position points. So Ella predicted Verstappen, I put Hamilton, and Ella took the point. And then when we got to the top 5, it was a bit of a mishmash this week. So Ella predicted Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton, Bottas, Norris, and got a point for Verstappen and Norris, so 1st and 5th. Whereas I got points for my predicting Verstappen, Hamilton. It was 2 points. For Perez, then Bottas, so I didn't get anything for that. And 5th, I put Norris. So that by the end of the Styrian Grand Prix, we're doing this again. We're bumping up in increments of 3. So Ella ended her week at 13, and I ended it at 20. And then
the Austrian,
yep.
We both put Max as pole. Australian. Oh. Austrian, and then I put Max and Bottas as my 1-2. Then I put Hamilton, Norris, and then Sainz. I thought, Leclerc's always there. I wanted to just change it up a bit. And Sainz been doing quite well recently, so
lucky.
I'm very happy with that. So I got 4 points. And technically, I only got Norris and Hamilton the wrong way round, right? No.
Yeah. So if you had them the other way round, you would have been full house.
Set.
Whereas I got only 2 points this week with predicted Max on pole and Max to win the race. My Hamilton, Perez, Norris, Bottas prediction was awful, it seems. So
it leaves me with a total of 17 and George on 22.
Yeah, you're catching up.
So let's go on our prediction for the British Grand Prix.
Yes. So, do you want me to run through them all?
Go on.
So, both of us this week have predicted Verstappen as pole. I think we both think the car's got it.
What a surprise.
And then Ella's predicted Verstappen, Norris, Hamilton, Perez, and Gasly, which I think is quite an interesting choice.
I was trying to factor in the whole qualifying. I think it's on a Friday. I can't remember. Tune in for a video coming soon on that. On the whole sprint race, and then the whole actual race. I was trying to put in people who, I would have been through it quite recently. So the whole Gasly and Norris, they were in F2. They know the format quite well, and not that long ago. It might have been the last 5 years, but I really wanted to put Tsunoda, but I don't think Tsunoda. I feel like he'll do well in the beginning section. In the actual race part, I think he'll drop down. So if Tsunoda does get in the top 5 in the sprint race, will you give me an extra point?
Yes, I'll give you an extra point for that. I agree. Yeah. You can have if Tsunoda is in the top 5, you can have an extra point for sprint.
Who are you going to pick for the sprint race? Your bonus point in the top 5.
Alonso.
Ooh, that's quite a rogue one.
I think. Well, he would have been on the front. He could have been on the second row this weekend if he didn't get held up by Vettel.
That's true. Very true.
So there we go. I've added that.
Right. So George he's added it to our Google form. George has put Verstappen, Perez, Norris, Hamilton, Bottas. Oi, oi.
Yeah.
That's quite, yeah, I see that.
I think that Mercedes are going to have a tough time this weekend. So, I think we're going to have.
It's not their usual British Grand Prix. They can.
No. I think they're going to have a lot of competition from the Red Bulls. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
What are your final thoughts, George?
We've got quite a few here on our notes. So I'll run through first one quickly. Abu Dhabi had a track update a couple of weeks ago. Changed some of the hairpins, changed some of the corners. Don't really think it will do very much for the track. I still think the track's going to be boring to watch. I don't think anything they can do to that track to make it a bit better actually will improve it. Just get rid of the track altogether, I think, is the best way.
I agree.
And we've also got a interesting article this morning reporting that Bottas could be moving over to Alfa Romeo for next season to replace Kimi Räikkönen, who is looking to retire reportedly, saying that the sport is a huge burden on him now. It's trying to keep physically fit enough to keep racing is becoming difficult, and he just wants to spend more time with his family. So if this is the problem, there's not many seats left on the grid. So if Bottas does ended up getting shunted by Mercedes for Russell, it would be the only two options he has is to go to Alfa Romeo or go to Williams. And if Raikkonen's retiring, it's, I think, more opportune for Bottas to go to Williams or go to Alfa Romeo than it is to go to Williams.
I do think that would be a better move. It's more competitive, and we're able to go a little bit more higher up the grid and show other teams why he's a good driver again. I know he does have links with Williams because he was in Williams before he moved up. So, but it's not the same team as it was before.
No.
It's not the family that he once raced for.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's got ties to that as much as people think. I feel sad for him. I'd be absolutely gutted for him if he does move. As much as I like George, I just feel like it's not the right time for George at the moment because Hamilton will still be number one.
Yeah.
I feel like he should wait and go when he will be number one.
Yes, I agree.
And at the moment, it's not as competitive.
No, and it won't be
as he thinks it is.
No, and I don't, and really understandably, I think Lewis is gonna stay beyond 2023 is the rumor as well. Now, although he's got 2-year extension, he may stay for longer. And I don't know. I think at this point he's got his titles get lost. Is my view.
Hamilton announced that he's staying. That was the other big news.
Yeah.
Which we probably all alerted to. I think he's going to stay because why would you want to be joint leading the records when you could be the greatest of all time? I think that's what he wants.
Yeah.
Also, looks good, and also he can prove, so far he's the only, black racer. You want to be the greatest of all time to prove that, anyone can do it, and also from a low-income family, he states it all the time.
Yeah.
If you don't know his story, you know it. He tells you about it all the time. Why would you want to not prove how great you are? Which I think he's thinking that he's not going to get it this year, so he's got to stay. I think as soon as he gets it, he'll leave. So just let him have it for a year.
Yeah, well, that's
my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I think he's going to make. He's going to try. If this is the problem, if he doesn't win it now, he needs the extra 2 seasons. I think that's probably why he's got a 2-year extension, not a 1-year extension. Because I think they would have just want to roll it over 12 months, but they're giving him 2 because they're worrying that I think there could actually be some worries within Mercedes about what happens if Lewis doesn't win this season. And that they want to be the ones to deliver him near enough a good majority of his titles.
Yes. And the other news that we're going to round up this podcast is we're saying goodbye to Australia this year due to COVID and everything that's happening. We're not racing in Australia, which I don't think we're going to miss that much.
No, I agree. I think it's... Yeah, I think it's I don't really enjoy Melbourne, if I'm honest. I get bored.
I don't.
So I think we'll find a better track, hopefully. We'll just do a double header somewhere else, and that's what they've said. So with any luck, we get a bit more more enjoyment from that. And on the same vein, well, I did forget, Sochi from 2023 is being replaced as well. So.
Oh yeah.
So
it's going to.
I think it is going to St. Petersburg. I think it is. But I think the only person who will be sad about Sochi going is Bottas, because it's.
That's true. He loves that track.
Yeah, so I think that will be the only.
Bottas is getting shafted.
Yeah, I know. Not only could he lose his seat, but he could lose his favourite track as well. So, well, I think that covers.
What a shame.
I think that covers most of what we have missed in the last 3 weeks. I think, does it not?
It does. That's it really. I've got nothing else to say apart from there should be some videos coming out about the whole sprint race and about all of the Grand Prix that happened and all the history around the track, because we finally moved out of uni, we've finished our degree, we've actually got some time now. I've moved house, so I'm happy now. I've got time.
No, these last few weeks have all been a bit everyone's been a bit manic, so it's we're catching up slowly.
Very slowly but surely.
We'll get there.
Anyway, thanks for listening for this super special. We'll see you soon.
Thanks all again. All right, we'll see you next in 2 weeks' time for the next podcast at the British Grand Prix.